Hey everyone, Sefki here. Have you ever scrolled through your social media feed and stopped dead in your tracks because of a totally bonkers headline? You know, the kind that makes you question if the Earth is actually flat or if Bigfoot is real? We've all been there. But here's the thing. In the age of clickbait and filter bubbles, it's easier than ever to fall down the rabbit hole of misinformation. So before hitting that share button, take a second and ask yourself, do I believe this? And more importantly, how can I verify the accuracy of this information? That, my friends, is the first step towards critical thinking, and it's a skill that's more important now than ever before. Hey everyone, Sefki here. Have you ever scrolled through your social media feed and stopped dead in your tracks because of a totally bonkers headline? You know, the kind that makes you question if the Earth is actually flat or if Bigfoot is real? We've all been there. But here's the thing. In the age of clickbait and filter bubbles, it's easier than ever to fall down the rabbit hole of misinformation. So before hitting that share button, take a second and ask yourself, do I believe this? And more importantly, how can I verify the accuracy of this information? That, my friends, is the first step towards critical thinking, and it's a skill that's more important now than ever before. Let's be real, we've all been there. You're scrolling through your feed and bam, you see a headline so shocking, so unbelievable, that you can't help but click. Maybe it's about a political scandal, a miracle cure, or even aliens. But before you accept that headline as gospel, we need to have a little chat about the source. Because, my friends, not all sources are created equal. Think of it like this. Let's say you're thirsty, right? You wouldn't just drink water from any random puddle you find, would you? You'd want to make sure it's clean, filtered, and safe for consumption. The same goes for information. Just because you see it on the internet, or even hear it from a friend, doesn't automatically make it true. So, how do you separate the fact from the fiction? Well, first things first, check out who published the information. Is it a reputable news organization, a respected academic journal, or a government website? Or is it some random blog, a meme account, or worse, a website that looks suspiciously like it was designed in the early days of the internet? Next, do a little digging into the author or the person sharing the information. Are they an expert on the topic? Do they have a history of bias or pushing a particular agenda? A little bit of online sleuthing can go a long way. And speaking of agendas, always, and I mean always, consider the purpose of the information. Is it meant to inform, persuade, entertain, or, and this is a big one, manipulate? Remember folks, in the wild west of the internet, anyone can be a publisher. So channel your inner detective, put on your critical thinking caps, and always, always question the source. Okay, so you've questioned the source, done your due diligence, and found a piece of information from a seemingly credible place. You're good to go, right? Well, not so fast. Here's the thing, even with the most reliable sources, there's always more to the story. Think of it like a prism. You shine a light through it, and what do you get? A beautiful spectrum of colors. The same goes for information. There are always multiple perspectives, different angles, and varying interpretations of the same event. And if you only ever focus on one, well, you're missing out on the bigger picture. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, that sounds like a lot of work. And yeah, it can be. It's way easier to just stay in our own little echo chambers, surrounded by people who think exactly like we do. But here's the thing about echo chambers. They can be dangerous. They can trap us in a bubble of confirmation bias, where we only seek out information that reinforces our existing beliefs, even if those beliefs are, well, wrong. So, how do we break free from the echo chamber? First, actively seek out diverse viewpoints. Read news from different sources, even if you don't agree with them politically. Listen to podcasts with guests who have different backgrounds and experiences. Engage in respectful conversations with people who hold opposing views. Remember, it's okay to disagree. In fact, disagreement, when approached with respect and an open mind, can be incredibly productive. It challenges our assumptions, forces us to think critically about our own beliefs, and helps us develop empathy and understanding for others. And who knows, you might even learn something new along the way. Alright, so we've talked about questioning the source and considering different perspectives, but what about the information itself? How do we know if it's actually, true? Well, that's where our good friend evidence comes in. Evidence is like the foundation of a house. If it's strong and sturdy, the house can withstand pretty much anything, but if it's weak and shaky, well, the whole thing is bound to crumble. The same goes for information. If the evidence supporting a claim is weak, biased, or just plain non-existent, then that claim is probably not worth your time. So how do we separate the factual wheat from the fictional chaff? First things first, we gotta channel our inner Sherlock Holmes. Start by asking yourself, what kind of evidence is being presented? Is it statistical data, expert testimony, historical documents, or anecdotal evidence? Each type of evidence has its own strengths and weaknesses, so it's important to be aware of those. Next, consider the source of the evidence. Is it from a peer-reviewed study, a government report, or a random person on the internet? Just like with sources of information, sources of evidence can be more or less credible depending on their expertise and potential biases. And finally, and this is a big one, be on the lookout for logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are like little tricks of the mind, flaws in reasoning that can make an argument seem more persuasive than it actually is. Some common logical fallacies to watch out for include ad hominem attacks, attacking the person making the argument instead of the argument itself, straw man arguments, misrepresenting an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack, and slippery slope arguments, claiming that one event will inevitably lead to a series of increasingly negative events. Remember folks, critical thinking is all about being skeptical, asking tough questions, and demanding evidence. Don't just take things at face value, dig deeper, think critically, and you'll be well on your way to becoming a more informed and discerning consumer of information. So far, we've covered a lot of ground questioning the source, considering different perspectives, and evaluating evidence. But there's one more crucial element to critical thinking that I want to talk about today: asking questions. Now, I know what you're thinking, John, isn't that what we've been doing this whole time? And yeah, you're right. But I'm not just talking about any old questions. I'm talking about the kind of questions that make you think, that challenge your assumptions, and that force you to dig deeper. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a detective investigating a crime scene. You wouldn't just look at the obvious clues and call it a day, would you? You'd want to ask questions like, who had access to the crime scene? What was the motive? Are there any witnesses? The same goes for information. Don't be afraid to ask questions like, why was this information published? Who benefits from this information being spread? Is there another side to this story? Asking questions is like shining a light into the dark corners of our minds, illuminating our biases and helping us see things from new angles. It's about being curious, inquisitive, and never settling for easy answers. Now I know what you're thinking, John, asking questions can be scary. What if I look stupid? What if I offend someone? And yeah, I get it. Asking questions can be intimidating, especially when we're challenging authority figures or questioning long-held beliefs. But here's the thing. The pursuit of truth is more important than our egos. It's more important than being right all the time. It's about being open to the possibility that we might be wrong, that there might be more to the story than we initially thought, and that the world is a complex and nuanced place. So the next time you encounter a piece of information, don't just accept it at face value. Ask questions, challenge assumptions, be curious. You might be surprised by what you discover. So, we've talked about questioning the source, considering different perspectives, evaluating evidence, and asking questions. But here's the thing about critical thinking, it's not a one-and-done deal. It's not like you learn it once and then you're good to go for life. It's an ongoing process, a lifelong journey of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Think of it like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But if you let it atrophy, well, it's not going to be there for you when you need it most. So, how do we keep our critical thinking muscles in tip-top shape? Well, it starts with education. And I'm not just talking about formal education, although that's certainly important. I'm talking about being a lifelong learner, about being curious about the world around you, and about seeking out new information and perspectives. Read books, articles, and long-form journalism from a variety of sources. Listen to podcasts and watch documentaries that challenge your assumptions. Take online courses or attend workshops on topics that interest you. The more you expose yourself to different ideas and perspectives, the better equipped you'll be to think critically about the information you encounter. But education isn't just about absorbing information, it's also about developing your critical thinking skills. There are tons of great resources available online and in libraries that can help you learn about logical fallacies, cognitive biases, and other critical thinking concepts. You can also find practice exercises and quizzes that can help you hone your skills. And don't be afraid to engage in respectful debates and discussions with people who have different viewpoints. Remember, critical thinking is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So, get out there, exercise those critical thinking muscles, and become a more informed, engaged, and discerning citizen of the world. So there you have it, folks. 5 practical ways to boost your critical thinking skills. Remember, in a world awash with information, the ability to think critically is not just a valuable skill, it's a superpower. It's the ability to cut through the noise, to separate fact from fiction, and to make informed decisions about the world around us. Now I know what you're thinking, John, this all sounds great, but it's a lot of work. And yeah, it can be. Critical thinking isn't always easy. It takes effort, it takes practice, and it takes a willingness to challenge our own assumptions. But trust me, the rewards are well worth it. By putting these tips and techniques into practice in your daily life, you can become a more conscious, more rational, and more accurate individual. So go forth, my friends, and think critically. The world needs your clear thinking now more than ever.